So welcome back to today's video. It's a bit of a different format. I wanted to sort of draw a hand drawing sort of style for these anatomy videos. So today we'll be going through the superior lateral surface of the brain and just discussing all the different gyri and fissures that lie. So superior lateral surface of the brain. These resources, I'm sort of guiding off Last Anatomy, so it'd be a good idea to check it out, to read more in detail, so it'll be a bit of an overview. So I'll start off with just a general aspect of the brain. And it's got different lobes sectioned off by the different, which is underlying the different bones of the skull. So I've got the frontal, we've got parietal, got occipital and temporal. So there's a deep fissure that separates the frontal and temporal lobes on the undersurface of the brain, and as it continues up on the lateral surface, it passes above the temporal lobe. So we call this the lateral sulcus, or the fissure of Sylvius. But really, we're really looking at the posterior aspect of the sulcus. The front end, there's short anterior and ascending rami that branch off it, and they sort of penetrate the inferior aspect of the frontal lobe. So in terms of the short sulcuses, so there's two that come off like this. So it leads off to three different areas that it subdivides the inferior frontal gyruses. So this part is called the orbital. This one is triangular. And this one is opercular. And remember, they're subdivisions of the inferior frontal gyrus. So when they overlie the left side, it's quite important because it overlies the region of the motor speech area, or the Broca's area. So in the triangular part over here, form the opercular alongside the parietal and temporal regions. And this is important because it overlies something that lies underneath, which is the insula, which is composed of various long, short gyri and completely surround itself by the circular sulcus, which we'll see in a medial aspect cut later on. Now there's also another major sulcus that runs just behind the opercular. So starting off here, and it goes to indent the superior border of the hemisphere, just behind the midpoint. It's the only long sulcus that passes on to the medial surface of the brain. So this is a central sulcus. This is a lateral sulcus. So you might also know this is the fissure of Rolando, and it separates the frontal and the parietal lobes. And just in front of it and behind it lie the motor and sensory regions as well. Now in terms of the frontal lobe, it's divided by two horizontal sulcuses, which divides it into, as you can guess, that this is the inferior, middle and superior frontal gyruses. And similarly in the temporal lobe, there's a similar distribution where there's two horizontal sulcuses which divide it into, as you can guess, superior, middle and inferior temporal gyri. And in terms of the parietal lobe, there is a transverse sulcus that divides it into the superior and inferior parietal lobules. And in the inferior parietal lobules, you can see the lateral sulcus and the superior temporal sulcus, and they're sort of capped off by two different smaller sulcuses. So you've got one here, we call this supramarginal gyrus, which is sort of covered off by that. And then there is also an angular gyrus, which is covered off by a sulcus underlying it. And in terms of the occipital lobe, there is a parieto-occipital sulcus, which if you imagine an imaginary line connecting it to the preoccipital notch, which lies in the medial cut of the brain, so situated here, it divides it into the occipital lobe and the parietal lobe. So I guess it'll be good to have a view of the medial cut, which we'll do on the next episode. Thank you.